I did this video because I thought it would be helpful for those who are familiar with Photoshop's tools, like making layers and masks and using the brush and the healing and the clone stamp tool. But how do you use that knowledge and put it together in a way that can produce a really polished result when it comes to retouching portraits? And this is a model I did that had some excellent examples of using some super basic tools to achieve a polished result. And this took me about 25 minutes to do. So it doesn't, it's not short, but it doesn't take a horrible amount of time. And you can probably take much, much longer on it. But I feel like the end result was really good for the amount of time and the tools that I used for it. And so I'm going to go through and just point out a couple of different tools that I use and the processes and why you would use certain tools in different places. The first step here is healing, and you can see that I have it on its own layer, and I'm going through and making sure I get any marks, acne, blemishes, pock marks, old scars if that's appropriate. I get rid of flyaways. I get rid of as much as I can get rid of and fix as far as dark light patches on the face that I can get away with at this step because it's quick, it's easy, and if you control the brush enough as far as the size and you sample, correctly, then it helps create a really nice polished product at the end of this. And another thing is, as I'm going through, sometimes I have to brush lines of hairs or lines of shadow or lines of marks. What I'll do is by using the R key, I can quickly access the rotate tool and I can turn the canvas to an easier orientation so I can get like a smooth, clean, easy heal of that area. As I go through this, I want to make sure that I zoom in and out so I'm not going too crazy with my edits, but I'm also making sure that I have a really nice, clean look at the end of my healing. Now you'll see me use the clone layer. And this cloning is done a lot of the times for the under eyes. If you clone just below the bags under the under eyes, right, and just with a nice soft, low flow, low opacity brush, then you can brighten up that area without getting into trying to heal or smooth that part out, because it's a very common natural part of the eyelid and the eye. If you got rid of that completely, that would look kind of weird. I also go ahead and I look for flyaways. The clone brush is great for handling flyaways, especially if you're photographing your subject on a really neutral surface or at a really wide open f-stop where everything around the subject is really blurry. It handles the flyaways really nicely. As long as you keep your brush on a really low opacity or low flow, you can handle a lot of that and kind of like, trick the eye into making it look like you have smooth edges around the hair. Okay, so the next step that I do is dodging and burning. You can do dodging and burning a lot of different ways. And this one, I'm just taking a curves adjustment tool and I'm just lowering it and raising it slightly, inverting the mask, and then painting that on with a very, very, very low opacity and low flow. Now, I want to, at this step, really point up some key points because I've seen a couple videos on this, I've seen some tutorials, and some instructors will explain this technique and then show you what they're doing, and for the life of me, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see what they were correcting or adjusting. And then they would show me the before and after and would look great, but I still had no idea what I was doing. And so after a couple of times, then I kind of caught on to what the secret was, and it wasn't a secret at all. Part of it's practice, but part of it is also knowing what to look for. And so I want you to pay attention. So first of all, this is a black and white image, right? We're still editing it with a black and white adjustment layer because when you dodge and burn, you are lightening the dark parts and darkening the light parts for the end goal of making the skin look smooth. So watch what I do right here. So you see that line that was there? And now I've used the dodge, so I've brightened up that line. And I've done it, it might not look that way right now, but when I show you the before and after, you'll see the difference. So right now you see that dark part of the skin. I'm taking a brush and I'm brightening the edges up. I'm not taking away the darkness completely. In some cases I am, but you'll see a dark patch around the skin and I'm brightening that up. I'm taking the small little tiny areas of darkness and I'm brightening that up. I'm looking around the skin, different areas. So I'm zooming in and I'm zooming out because you can get really like sucked into this. But pay attention and, turn on and off the dodge adjustment to see the work that you've done. And then go back into it if you want to work on another area. But you can see like right where the cheek meets the nose, there's a small little area of shadow. We're not talking about like major areas, especially if you've already lit your subject very well. These can be small and imperceptible, but when you start looking for it, like right there, I just handled the under of the eyebrow. There's the eyelid. You'll start to see these patches of unevenness in the lightness and the darkness. If you want some more help or assistance with this, you can go ahead and on top of all of that, all of your edits, apply a curve adjustment and really make a strong S curve. That way the shadows and the light patches on the skin become much more pronounced. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can think that you've completed it and you can walk away and it looks good and then come back to it and find more stuff. So you'll hear high-end retouchers spending hours doing this step. The higher quality image you have, the more detail that's there, the more time you're likely to spend on this. You do not have to spend that much time on this. If you're working for a commercial client, you might, and you're working 1-2 images maybe at a time, sure. But normally, no. So here I'm now switching to burning. So I'm darkening these light areas. And this includes, anything in the area that I want to darken, as well as the skin. I've found, and others will teach this too, that you'll burn way less than you'll dodge. So you'll find yourself brightening up the image more often than you'll find yourself darkening the image. So it's just something you'll find. Don't really worry about it, but you will spend more time brightening it than darkening it. So here I'm going back along the image and I'm seeing if there's anything else I want to heal or correct with the clone or healing brush tool. And I found some black tape I want to get rid of on my black V-flat. It's always good to zoom in and out of your image because when people look at your image, unless you're doing like commercial work or magazine or prints, for the most part, they're going to be looking at it on a tiny screen. So you want to actually look at it as if it was tiny to see how it looks. You might spend a little less time on your image than more, depending on where it's going to be placed because of that. I'm also going over dodging and burning the different areas that maybe I want to do a little bit more of. after examining it. Sometimes I'll even get up and walk away and then come back to it a little while later because just having a fresh look on it will help. And just, finding anything else that I want to tweak. It really, at a certain point, is up to you as far as like how far you want to take this image. Now I've finished that and I've merged everything together with a stamp clone visible. And then I put it in high pass and adjust it just so I see the outlines of the face because I want to use this to sharpen the image. And you can choose, soft light, hard light, vivid light. These are going to give different degrees of sharpness. And I found that soft light worked best. But after I looked in the before and after and I zoomed back out of the image, I found that I didn't actually handle the fingers, which, the additional skin there and some of the discoloration. So I delete that and then I go back in and I correct this further. And I left this bit in here. I could have just, skipped to the part that I got it right to show you that it's okay to undo this because you have all these edits on their own layers. You're free to do that. So I could just easily delete that sharpening layer without undoing all my work, go back into the heel, correct the things that I want to correct, and then after I'm done with that, I can do that sharpening again. Right now, I'm taking a blank layer and I'm simply selecting good quality skin color and I'm coloring the redness of her knuckles. And I put that in color blend mode. You can also try hue, either one, depending on, the situation. You can see my flow is really, really low and I'm just going over and getting that redness out. So it's more even and natural with the rest of the skin. Now that I've done my sharpening again, I'm going to apply another curves adjustment. These are going to be two curve adjustments. One is going to be a brightening and the other one is going to be a darkening. And as you can see, my image brightens up a lot. But then I go to my layer style, I adjust the underlying image, and then I use the option key to split that bottom triangle slider until I can soften the edges of that adjustment. Now look at this. So I've taken that skin and I've added some brightness, some really almost kind of like a glossiness to the skin. And now I'm going to do the same with the shadowing. Dragging the slider all the way that direction. You can see in real time what happens. And then softening that edge using this split slider. Sometimes this adjustment can be kind of heavy, so you want to decrease the opacity. I put it in a group so then I can view before and after as a whole and then adjust the opacity further if I need to. By holding Option key and clicking on the layer's eye, you can view that layer individually so you can see the before and after. Now I go into Neural Filters, Photoshop's latest and greatest filter, and I'm going to smoothen the skin, do a final touch, and this I apply very lightly. And I find that it works really, really well if I've already done some of the base work. And you can see I've played around with the sliders here, and as soon as I hit OK, it creates a new layer, which then I can delete or take away if I think it's too much, or I can decrease the opacity. And I play with it a couple times to make sure that I have it the way that I want. I save the image. I open it back up in Capture One, which I use for my raw editing tool. And now I'm going to do some finishing tweaks as far as the colors. And this is just based off taste at this point. There's no particular, hard rule of thumb that I use. I'm adjusting the coolness of the shadows and the warmth of the highlights just to kind of see what effect that will give me, and play around with it and see what looks the best.